So we're here at the Tofte Ranger Station, just walking into an open house. It's the 30th of October. The Forest Service is hosting this event. They're going to talk about some of the issues facing the Forest Service nationwide, including no seasonal hires for next summer for 2025. That's a big issue, nationwide issue. Tom Hall, the Forest Supervisor, was recently talking about that at a meeting of the Cook County Board of Commissioners. And it also could impact some of the hours for this ranger station, the Tofte Ranger Station, including issuing permits from the ranger station. So a lot to find out about at this event. Let's go in and check it out. Hello.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, Tom.
How you doing?
Doing just fine.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Go on ahead.
We're sitting down with a news update from the Boundary Waters. Joe Fredericks, huge component of Paddle and Portage, is bringing the news of the wilderness locally and nationally to our readers and listeners. And you recently hit the road just down at Tofte to the Tofte Ranger Station to take in some pretty significant updates from the U.S. Forest Service on impacts on the Boundary Waters. There's a lot happening right now. Help us make sense of all of it.
Right. This is a nationwide story that's about budget cuts. As I said at the top before I went into the ranger station, that they are not going to hire some of their seasonal workforce for 2025. And that for the Forest Service in general is people who come in the summer typically and do things like clear hiking trails. And around here in the Boundary Waters, latrines, campsites, that type of stuff. So the grunt workforce, so to say. And it's a huge deal nationally, like I'm saying, because out west, seasonal workforce is a massive component of some of the big national forests out west. I mean, so High Country News, Backpacker, Outside Magazine, they're all doing big stories about this. And I've done one for Paddle and Portage earlier this month, and I went to this Tofte open house and wanted to speak with the Forest Supervisor, the Tofte District Ranger, and other people to learn more about what this means here in the Boundary Waters in Superior National Forest.
Exactly, because there's these budget cuts that are happening across the country for the Forest Service. But what that means is that every place that's, managed under that umbrella and the personnel there are tasked to figure out what are we going to do to still manage this. And that is everywhere from the Southwest, Northwest, out East, and here. And so you're involved in these updates in real time. What does this mean across the Boundary Waters, and what does this mean even more specifically at Tofte Ranger Station? I've been hearing rumors that ranger station could close. Is there any truth to that? Are we looking at a possible loss of a cooperator next paddling season?
Well, let's hear what Tom Hall, the Forest Supervisor, had to say about the Tofte Ranger Station for next season.
So I don't know that we have a definitive answer of how much, what our staffing hours are going to be. I would sort of lean towards it's going to be open, but is it going to be open as much as it has been in the past? Probably going to be some sort of restrictions. What are the highest use days? Similar to what we saw this summer, right? Those staffing restrictions that we ran into this summer where we had to restrict our hours, we're going to run into those same things because our ability to fill those gaps, that's going to be further out than this next summer.
So 5 days a week? Does that seem reasonable to issue permits? Or
I would expect that we're probably close to 5 days a week. But again, if I'm able to staff Grand Marais at 7 days, does that reduce the capacity that I have to staff Tofte to 5 day? And so what's that trade-off? What's worth it? Talking to some of our cooperators of those that are going to help us with the pressure with those permits. What is the biggest need that exists out there? Just understanding our capacity and their capacity. So we're having some of those conversations. We're really starting with our internal conversations first to understand where are we at, where can we triage and shift resources to provide that resource.
And when do you need to make that determination by?
Yeah, so before we go to go live, right, because all of those office hours are published as we start to roll that out. So that's the absolute drop dead. We want to start to foreshadow that well before that. So, we're starting to get into, the fall and winter and what we think of as use or lose time, right, people's leave that they have coming for the holidays. And so we know that our capacity to have these robust conversations is going to be limited. So trying to have that before we get into the Thanksgiving, Christmas sort of holidays.
Do you need to tell recreation.gov if you are open or not as a place that somebody could get a permit?
Yeah.
There's a coordination between recreation.gov and I can pick up my permit here?
Correct.
And so you need to know that before like January 29th or whatever. Then,
correct.
At the absolute latest.
Yep.
Okay, so the Tofte Ranger Station to be determined.
Yeah. And it's not just Tofte, our Cook, our LaCroix Ranger District, that's another place where we're having severe staffing shortages, and we saw it this summer as well. And, if we need to shift staff from other offices to staff those offices, obviously our heaviest use office is out of Ely for the Quishway Ranger District. Mm-hmm. And then the North Shore is sort of the second. And so, how do we shift resources and what is reasonable are all things that we're thinking about.
Sawtooth would be the place to pick up for Brule or like some of those other ones where they're not going up to Sawbill.
Sure.
Have you talked to them, or like is that when you're saying cooperators?
Those are the people that we obviously need to have conversations with because the shift that we had to make this summer, that was sort of spur of the moment. Hey, like we thought we were going to be in a different spot and we weren't, right? We have a little bit more time to make sure that we have those right conversations. Their capacity is obviously a concern, right? So having those conversations, I haven't had those conversations with them. So those are the conversations that we need to have.
So what we're hearing from Tom on that is we're going to find out more in the next month or so. Certainly the people at Sawtooth Outfitters, Sawbill, Grand Marais Outfitters, anybody on the east side of the wilderness going to be very aware of what that means if the Tofte Ranger Station is issuing some permits, if they're open 5 days a week, or if they're not issuing any permits, if they don't open at all. We'll wait and find out. Tom and Ellen Bogartis-Shamaniak, the Tofte District Ranger, both told me point blank, this is a huge issue for us. We're well aware of the significance in the timeline, and we will have something determined by early December, mid-December at the latest. Stay tuned. We'll let you, the public, and the cooperators know. So more to come on that. It sounds like 5 days a week. And based on what I heard from Tom, what he just shared with us here on the podcast, I'm thinking they'll be open 5 days a week.
Well, one thing I appreciate about that is that they are really considering how they can cooperate with the other cooperators in this case to still meet the needs of the users, and it's nice to know that that's front and center of their thinking moving forward. But let's zoom out to the larger impacts on the wilderness across the boundary waters. What will this mean for campsites, latrines, portage trails? What are they potentially going to look like come July?
Yeah, now we're talking about this nationwide thing that's being covered by Outside Magazine and so forth, the seasonal reduction of the workforce. And here on Superior National Forest, is actually we're in a better position than some of those western forests because of how they, on the east side of the country, which we consider the east side, Superior National Forest falls into this east side of the nation.
We actually don't have temporary staff on the Superior National Forest. We've transitioned away from temporary staff a few years ago. And so any of those restrictions that we might have as an agency aren't going to be felt here, but our ability to fill any of those vacancies that we have, those are going to be gaps in our capacity.
And so we're in a better position because some of those seasonal workforce are actually held on a retainer, and some of those people are going to be coming back. So the problem, though, as Tom explains, is that they were already understaffed, and now they can't hire anybody new. And in some of these parts, the districts on Superior National Forest, they were at like 50% capacity. So they're like down half their crew. So that's why this is an issue for the boundary waters, and it will impact, it has the potential at least to impact things like latrines, portages, and so forth. Here's what Tom had to say about it.
So that capacity, right, those vacancies, those gaps that we have in that organization that we're not able to fill right now, they have an impact, right? And so if I have fewer people that are able to go do that thing, there's going to be an impact. And so we're working with partners and other opportunities of, some of those fees go towards that type of work. And so can we enter into an agreement or a contract to do some of those basic health and safety sort of items that our wilderness rangers would normally do to help with that capacity that we don't currently have.
Is there then a staffing shortage of rangers too?
Yeah. Across the entire wilderness, right? Each of our 4 districts that touch the wilderness area, there's definitely vacancies that we have in our organization.
That you would have otherwise tried to fill before the next quota season? Or can you say approximately how many you're down?
Each district kind of varies, right? There's some districts that are probably 50% down from where that desired organization is. And then others, there's just a couple vacancies and there's potential for additional vacancies, right? And that's just normal course of business.
Hi, my name is Rachel, and I work for Friends of the Boundary Waters as the Northern Education Coordinator. I'm here in Grand Marais today. I just got to spend the day working with Great Expectations students. We got to learn some portaging and team building skills, and we also got to learn about animal adaptations through looking at animal skulls and investigating which one's an omnivore and which one's a carnivore. We've got a lot of really incredible work and opportunities through a recent grant we got through the LCCMR, and if you'd like to learn more, please check out all our work with outdoor education on our website, and we hope to meet you all soon.
No matter what happens next week on the election, there's going to be a new administration in place. Does that mean that things could be better as far as staffing for next year, or even potentially worse, not choosing an administration at all because there is going to be a change, but like where we are now, is there the potential that in terms of staffing that situation could improve, or that situation could be more dire than it is?
Yeah, so a lot of this is dependent on the budget, right? And so Congress working with whichever administration to pass that budget, even the current administration. And so all things are possible, and really it's hard to forecast exactly how that's going to play out.
Okay. But it doesn't sound like, because my interpretation of what you were sharing during the meeting of the county board a couple of weeks ago was a little bit more like, we're not sure how we're going to deal with some of these issues.
There is an impact, no doubt. And so we're working through those things. And, that awareness of both the users of the wilderness and the county specifically for that long-term relationship that we have in their management and their economics, that reality was what I was trying to share.
So another component of this, and what I thought was really cool to hear from Tom, is that they're going to want the people who go to the Boundary Waters on a canoe trip or hiking trip to help them out. If you are at a campsite and the latrine is like getting close to the rim, the earth, tell the Forest Service about it. They want to hear so that they can reprioritize or get out there and do something about it, not close campsites, not do that type of thing, but actually get proactive. And they're hopeful that the user, us, anybody on a canoe trip, tells them, hey, this latrine is getting full. Hey, there's a widowmaker hanging on the campsite at West Pike Lake. Hey, on Caribou Lake, there's a huge pine that fell down. That type of thing. Tell the Forest Service, because they're going to be understaffed in some of these key areas, that it's helpful to them. Here's what Tom said about it.
So realistically, we have staff, right, that is going to go and assess all of this, and where there's the greatest need, that's where we'll focus our time, right? And there's always that triage of what is my capacity and what is the need that exists out on that landscape. As we have fewer staff, it becomes the most critical things are where we dedicate our time and energy, and that's going to continue. So if there is a latrine, that is a health and safety issue, right? Both for humans and the environment. And so if that needs to be filled in and a new latrine needs to be dug, that's probably a higher priority than maybe clearing the portage of here's a down log. Most likely, I do want to clear that. It needs to be cleared, but I'm probably going to go do the latrine first, right? And that's just an example. Okay, what are those trade-offs of what I may need to do for this season?
And so is that where the public can help and be, if they are at a site and the latrine is full or getting full, like to tell?
Let us know. That is absolutely very helpful. And all of our latrines have a number on them, right, and which lake you're on, and that helps us to identify where we need to go.
Oh, yeah, interesting. There's a latrine number?
There is. Those are accountable property.
Okay, yeah, interesting. So the public can play a role in this as far as like, if those issues are coming up.
Whether it's issues with a portage and things that need to be fixed, whether down trees or others, or latrines that are full or a hazard tree, any of those things. Those are very helpful to let us know at the end of your trip where you've had a good experience or a bad experience, and things that we can help to improve.
With already struggling with staffing to get the work done, they're going to also be managing, I would imagine, quite a few reports from users like us and our listeners who are wanting to actively report any issues they see in the wilderness, and that's going to be a whole new part of the work coming into this season. As a user, I'm curious to know, well, how do I help other than reporting? Is there more I can do? Should I be forming a posse and digging latrines, or what do they want?
I actually asked Tom and Ellen about that. Like, can people go out there with a shovel and dig a latrine logistically, safely, and as far as the quality of that type of thing? There's some standards that need to be met there, right?
Well, I'm pretty good with a shovel.
Right, that ain't gonna cut it. That's awesome that you are. Not to take that away.
Thank you.
But there are some organizations actually that will help be an umbrella or sort of a place that you can go through that is more official, or that is official, to help with some of this. And they're called the Northwoods Volunteer Connection. That's one of them. They're based now in Two Harbors. Their director, Joe Swanson, who happened to be at the Tofte event when I was there on October 30th. And I got to talk with Joe and the Forest Service about this collaboration and how do we, the visitors, the people who love the Boundary Waters, get involved in an official way that is helpful. And here's what Joe, the director of the Northwoods Volunteer Connection, said about that.
Yeah, so we're still figuring out what it's going to look like too. We don't know for sure what the impacts will be to the forest, but we know that Forest Service staff are going to be stretched more thin than usual, and they're always pretty busy, even in a normal year, and next year won't be normal. Mm-hmm. So I think it's more critical than ever that people who love to recreate outdoors find a way to give back to it in some way. And Northwoods Volunteer Connection offers a number of volunteer projects that will connect people with the National Forest and give them a way to give back.
So just to be clear, even though this is based in Two Harbors on the shore, this organization will be coordinating volunteers across the wilderness, east to west?
That's right. Yep. From Ely to Lac LaCroix, end of the Echo Trail, to the end of the Arrowhead Trail. They're going to help the Forest Service in any capacity that they can.
This is Mark Savoy with Solbakken on Superior. Solbakken has 6 motel rooms and 6 charming cabins located on the shores of Lake Superior. The motel rooms are the perfect place to stop over either on your way in or your way out of the Boundary Waters canoe area. Visit our website at Solbakken on Superior to make your reservations today.
There's really a lot of uncertainty still. A lot of unknowns that are still going to be sorted out by the Forest Service, and that sounds like then that also means that as users, we still have a lot to learn about what it's going to be like going into next paddling season. What can we expect for the next steps and moving forward?
Well, the big thing on the Tofte district is finding out their hours. Same with the Cook Ranger Station. So I think we'll hear about Tofte and Cook, as Tom and Ellen said. They have to tell recreation.gov when they're going to be open so that people can choose it as their place to pick up a permit. So they're hoping to have that done by early December. It could be mid-December. But sometime in the next month and a half, we're going to find that part of it out. As far as the seasonal workforce, who's going to be digging the latrines, and that part of it, we'll wait and see. But as I said, like, Tom was a little more upbeat about that than he was even 2 weeks ago at a meeting of the Cook County Board of Commissioners here in Grand Marais, when he came and said, this is going to be a big deal that impacts latrines, campsites, and he even mentioned stuff like we don't want to close the boundary waters. Like, that's a quote from Tom at that meeting.
So how do we meet those critical needs knowing that we don't want to close the boundary waters? So how do we triage those other programs to make sure that we're capable of providing those services? And so that's really the mode that we're in right now. And there's trade-offs, right? If somebody's shifting from one thing into another, I'm less capable of doing that in another place. So we're squeezing a balloon, right?
So he wasn't as in that space at the Tofte Ranger Station. It was more like, we're not as bad as some of the western forests are going to be based on this news because we retained some of our seasonal crew. They'll be back. Our issue is that we were down 50% going into it. So we are going to be impacted in the boundary waters, but not in a way that I think has them going, what are we going to do? Like, they're going to manage this. It's going to be okay. It might be a little bit slower response time to address some of the issues, and some of the other projects might not get done that they wanted to, landscape management, that type of thing. But the boundary waters, average user coming from Iowa, Indiana, coming on their trip, probably not going to really notice a whole lot as far as, is this different?
Joe, thanks for doing the work of going to this meeting, of talking to these officials and bringing us these updates. It's so valuable. I want to say a huge thank you to all the Forest Service staff who are getting us this information. I hope that it will really help the users appreciate the work that the Forest Service does to make our experience positive. And I also want to thank all of our listeners and our sponsors for helping us get this information to our listeners. We appreciate all y'all. Anything else, Joe?
Well, I just want to say it's nice having worked professionally and interviewed Ellen, the Tofte District Ranger, for many years now, and Tom in the couple of years he's been here, that face-to-face time, going to these events, you get to speak with them in just a more real, authentic way, certainly more than like an email allows, which is what most of the metro media do because they're not here. So it's really helpful for me to sit down and talk with Tom and Ellen at an event like this about this very important issue. And that has developed because of the podcast and the capacity that we have we have the time to go do this. And that all goes back, though, to the supporters, subscribers of Paddle and Portage and our sponsors for making this possible to go do this. So it all kind of works in unison, if you will.
And speaking of our listeners and subscribers, thanks for the support. You're going to keep getting updates like this from the Paddle and Portage team. We'll keep you posted.
Anyway, I'm trying to get out and do one last walleye fishing.
You had to get that in there, didn't you?